So let's go ahead and get into your life right out of the box, because let's get to the fun stuff later.
What does that imply?
So, okay, you study acting at Penn State, which I won't hold against you because I'm an Iowa grad and, yay. And you studied psych. How did you go from psych into acting?
Here's how it happened. I went to Penn State thinking I wanted to be a psychiatrist, and I was in the hallway at the Theater Arts Building, and I was signing up to be an usher so I could get into the theater for free. I used to do plays in high school. I thought I would go to see some plays. And the director of the play came down the hall and said, "Hey, man, what are you doing?" I said, "I'm signing up to see the play." He said, "Would you like to be in this show?" I said, "What do I have to do?" He said, "You got to show up at rehearsal, and I'm going to give you a drum, and you sit on the floor, and you got to play drums in this show called Indians by Arthur Coppett. It was a professional company of actors from New York called the New American Theater Company, and I went to rehearsal with them during the day. Then they performed repertory at night, did another show at night. Then they'd go out to the bar. Then they'd come back the next day. They'd go to rehearsal like civilized at 10 in the morning, perform at night. I said, this is a great job. So I became a theater major and got the most useless degree you can get anywhere in any country. A BFA in theater arts with a focus on acting. Now there's a degree.
Well,
Guaranteed work.
It definitely worked.
Yeah,
for
but
you.
I'm in the minority, as you know.
Okay, so one of the early jobs you have, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that you played Captain America for Marvel. Is that correct?
Who's these? I played
correct?
Captain America.
Yeah, for Marvel.
Marvel Comics.
Okay, so tell us about that.
My friend Charlie Davis was Spider-Man, and he and I we were somewhere, and he said they needed a guy to come and do Captain America. So I went over to Marvel 575 Madison Avenue and met Stan Lee and met the woman who was running the promotional, and they gave us these spandex costumes and big
It kind
high
of looks
lit-
like that.
Yeah.
That's you, by the way.
Never looked better. And same weight today. Pound for pound, one of your finest American actors. And then we used to have to go and pick up our costumes and sign them out at Marvel. And we'd we'd be sent to like Omaha or Des Moines, let's say. Well, and we'd have a list of supermarkets and 7-Elevens and comic book stores that we were meant to appear at. We'd do one every 20 minutes or every half hour. And somebody would have picked us up at the airport with a Ford Taurus rental car. And at each of these appearances, I'd go to the trunk of the car and I'd get out the garbage can lid with the Captain America star on it, put the little plastic grippered Captain America things, and I'd get up at the hood of the car and ride into the parking lot of the supermarket like that. And they say, "You don't even look like Captain America," and take my $50 for the day and go home.
Okay, quick question. Who do you think makes a better Captain America, you or Chris Evans?
Chris Evans. I'd go with Chris Evans.
All right, let's ask the audience. You?
Yeah.
Chris Evans.
Yeah.
See? No, not a comparison.
Don't be kind.
Okay, so you started your acting career as a guest on a...
Where'd you get all this information, by the way?
Google. So you started your acting career on a number of television shows in the 70s, 80s, 90s. I got to read these because there's tons of them, like Charlie's Angels, Fantasy Island, The Waltons, Eight is Enough, Dukes of Hazzard, Heart to Heart, Falcon Crest, Hill Street Blues, Quincy, Highway to Heaven, The Fall Guy, The Twilight Zone, Matlock, Wings. You know, it'd be faster to list the ones you weren't on. How do you do that? How do you get into a different character?
I'm one of those actors who believes in learn your lines, hit the mark, say the lines. As we used to say, hit it and spit it. Are you disappointed?
Okay. Yeah, I am. I expected something much deeper and more
Listen, I would
perspective.
Here, I'll give you a little deeper answer, since that's what you're looking for. I studied acting. I studied Stanislavski technique. I studied Meisner, and I understand about packing, and I understand about living in the moment, and I understand about visualizing, and I get all that, and I use a lot of that. However, I'm married to Jeannie Francis, as you all know, who's famous for being Laura on Luke and Laura. I worked on Star Trek with Sir Patrick Stewart, Marina Sirtis, Brent Spiner. So look at it this way. I was like the 4th best actor on my show, and I was already the 2nd best actor in my own house. So let's just say I'm glad I learned another craft.
So what's been your most challenging role?
That's a good question. Riker, Wild Bill Riker. In the beginning of the job, Gene Roddenberry, the late great Gene Roddenberry, said, I want Riker to have a Midwestern glint in his eye, but never to smile. I said, really? He said, yeah, it's gonna be great. So for 2 seasons, I looked like I had a stick up my butt, and I never smiled. And then finally, when I couldn't stop, he said, maybe we should let a little more Frakes into it. But he wanted us very solid, and it just wasn't happening.
Who most influenced you during this time?
My father was the biggest influence on me. His philosophy, he was an English professor for 50 years, was that you should, and I think it's a good philosophy for all of us, we should do a job that we love. And if you were here for the last speaker, Boris said something that I found fascinating and felt very proud to say, that one of the percentages that he showed was that 97% of the people believe that there should be creativity in their work, 45% of them felt that they were creative, and 2% felt that the work they did was creative. And every day I go to work, I feel like the work that we do is creative. Even if it's a dreadful show, you have to make the best episode of that show you can make. And all the people around you, the other actors, the cinematographer, the production designer, everyone is doing their best creatively to help tell the story that you want to tell. So I felt very privileged to be in the 2%.
Okay, so let's get into Star Trek for a second here. And I gotta ask this because I was shocked when I read this, and if it's a lie, please tell us, because I'm so disappointed if it isn't.
That's kind of a nice lead.
My understanding is when you got the role of Riker, or when you were auditioning for it, you had to go dig out videotapes of the original Star Trek because you knew very little to nothing about it.
True story. Oh. I'm sorry. I know a lot about it now. I became a fan. I did. I get videotapes of the original series and tried to understand. I don't know how I missed the boat on that. I missed the boat twice with cultural icons. I didn't know that Jeannie was famous when I started to flirt with her. I would have never had the guts. I didn't know that she was like a part of the popular culture. And I didn't really get, I've heard of Star Trek, but I didn't really get it until I became part of it, if you will. And since then, it has, it's changed my life. I'll tell you 2 other Star Trek related family stories. One is that I didn't know much about the show, but my wife, when she grew up, had a picture of Captain Kirk on her wall. So she was a fan. The second is, after I got the show, and I went home to visit my mom and dad in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, where they lived, where my mom still is. I went out to our refrigerator was on the back porch. I went out to get a beer out of the refrigerator, and on the refrigerator door of my home was a poster-sized picture of Patrick Stewart. And I know what the picture was because it came out of one of the fan magazines. It was big enough. It was a 2-shot. It was Patrick and me. And what she had put on the refrigerator was the Patrick side of the picture and folded me around the curve of the door.
Okay, so you mentioned Gene Roddenberry before. Why do you think he picked you for this role?
Roddenberry, I'm not quite sure why he picked me, but he believed in something that he saw a little bit of himself. He saw himself in Picard and in Riker and in Wesley Crusher. I think he had a vision of the future that he was trying to express through these 3 guys. And I auditioned 7 times over 6 weeks for this job. I used to wear the same shirt because I thought it was my lucky sci-fi shirt. And by about the 6th or 7th audition, it kind of walked over and put itself on because I hadn't cleaned it. At any rate, I used to go to Roddenberry's office for the last few auditions, which were for whatever level executive at Paramount needed to approve the decision of who was going to play Riker. And in those meetings, Roddenberry would express to me, with the real passion that he had for it, the vision of the 24th century. And I always quote him when I speak at the conventions. He used to say, in the 24th century, there will be no hunger and there will be no greed, and all of the children will know how to read. Gene
Something
Roddenberry.
LeVar would appreciate.
Yeah, very LeVar.
Okay.
You want me to show how the communicator works?
Yeah, I want you to wear it during this because I'll feel more like you're really here.
Okay.
So put it on for me. On your
Is
lapel.
he setting me up for something? Why do I feel like I'm being set up?
It's not going to explode or anything.
Hold on.
There you go.
Hello, Gene? Yeah, Jonathan. Thanks for everything.
Okay, so I got to ask.
Okay.
Season 1, no beard. Season 2, you got the full thing going there. So
Okay.
what happened?
Season 1, after season 1, there was a writer's strike. And during the writer's strike, I stopped shaving. I don't like to shave, right? Do you like to shave? Yeah. Exactly. The writer's strike was settled, and I was called back into a meeting with Roddenberry and Rick Berman, who was with the producer of the show, Patrick, Brent, and I. And Roddenberry, who had these huge, long hands, and they used to call him the great space bird of the galaxy. He was about 6'7". He'd say, Jonathan, that was my impersonation, Jonathan, I love the beard. It looks nautical. So he said, we'll keep it. Riker should have a beard. And what we'll do is we'll shape it, and it'll be nautical and decorative. So, after our meeting, Roddenberry, Berman, the king of makeup, Michael Westmore, the Academy Award-winning makeup artist who did our show, I was dragged down to his makeup trailer, and they were armed with black eyeliner pencils. And on my face, they drew the shape they thought my nautical decorative beard should be. And it had a little, this thing here and a little 90-degree here. And so then they'd shave me down to that shape and take me into the stage, and they'd put it on camera and look at it the next day and decide if they liked it or not. If they didn't like it, they'd glue hair back where they had just shaved it. And anyway, they settled on this beard shape, and about 6 or 8 weeks into the second season, somebody from the studio sent a memo to, to Roddenberry saying, we need to reduce Riker's beard by 10% on the lower left side. This was their note. 6 weeks they'd seen this beard. Anyway, that's the story of the beard.
Let's give it up for the beard.
Yeah. There's a line you don't hear every day.
So you've had the privilege of being on 4 different Star Trek TV series, and I think the only other person that's done that was Roddenberry's wife, Majel, correct?
Majel Barrett.
Majel Barrett.
Which 4 was I on? Next Generation.
Next Generation.
Voyager. Deep Throat 9.
Deep Space Nine.
And Enterprise.
And Enterprise.
Yes.
Yeah, those 4.
As Commander Riker.
Commander Riker.
What about on Deep Space Nine?
Your evil brother.
Thomas Riker. You are all over this. Tony, you're killing it. I think you win something for that.
And for those of you who don't know, Gene Roddenberry's wife was Nurse Chapel on the original series, and she was Deanna Troy's mother on Next Generation.
And Deanna Troy's father was played by? I don't know. The late, great, he died 2 days ago, David Ogden Stiers from MASH.
Oh, yes. He wasn't on very often.
Once.
Yeah. Not enough to remember, apparently. So, Roddenberry, you worked with him. Tell us about his creativity and his imagination.
He actually believed the reason that we're all together, and the reason that I'm here, and the reason I do conventions, and the reason the shows have lasted for 50 years, is that Roddenberry's vision of the future was one of hope. And as we all know, we need to believe that the future will be brighter and stronger, and that we'll take care of each other, and there won't be sexism, and there won't be racism. And Roddenberry actually believed that. The dystopic sci-fi that has permeated the television and movies and books was not Roddenberry's belief. And I stand with him with that hope that dwindles with each passing year. But I believe that vision was what inspired the original series, and the magic that he found in the casting and the wonderful the triangle of the Kirk, Spock, Bones triangle, with the sort of sarcastic, ironic bent, and in addition to the scientific bent. It had heart, it had science, it had vision. He was, he's always spoken up as a visionary, and I feel very blessed to have been part of his world.
So your wife, you mentioned before.
Yes.
There she is, beautiful woman.
She sure is.
So, how many soap opera fans do we have in here? Huh? We got a few? Yeah, Luke and Laura? Yeah, big time.
My wife has
30
been on and
million
off.
views, that show.
The marriage, the wedding? 30 million.
30 million views. And you've been married to her for how many years?
We've been together for 33 years, married for 30.
Okay, so there you go. Yeah, let's give that up. Hollywood.
Victory!
All right, so I have to ask, because I sent out a kind of a questionnaire to a bunch of Trekkie friends of mine. I said, hey, if you had to ask Frakes one question, what would it be? And this was on every one of these. All right, so I have to ask. So in the original series, Kirk was portrayed as a guy, well, let's just say, he couldn't settle on a single person or woman. All right, he couldn't. He was like the intergalactic thing, you know. So that bestowment or that baton was passed to you. How did your wife feel about that?
Well, first of all, I had to watch Jeannie with Tony, so it was work. I got more aliens than she got, but no, that was not an issue in our house, thankfully, because we were both. There's an advantage to being married to an actor, because they know what your day's like, and they know that that's sometimes part of your day. And there's a disadvantage to being married to an actor. I'm not sure what that is. I will tell you this, so my acting teacher at Penn State, Archie Smith, one of my acting teachers, said to me, the two most important things to remember about acting, for anyone out there who's thinking of this as a profession, are, number one, make sure your shoes fit. Number two, never marry an actress. My shoes fit.
Well, I mean, as I was doing this, I kept thinking about what my wife would say, and I'd come home, I'm sure she'd say something snarky like, you know, how was your day? And then storm off the next room. Because
So that's it. Look, that's six different aliens. Some of them are aliens.
that's only a six.
That's
there were
nothing.
many more.
Yeah, but it doesn't even hold a candle to Shatner or to
Well,
Kirk.
I didn't show all the other 45.
No. That's a Bring Lloydie. That's my Imzadi, Marina Sirtis. That's Uta, who I had to unfortunately kill. And that's the planet where they made me dress like a woman. And the one in the bottom middle is the lovely and talented Minuet. And that's not me, that's
And she
Thomas
wasn't even
Riker.
real. She was a hologram.
She was a hologram. She was great, though. I played the trombone in that episode.
I know you did. And you really do play the trombone.
Oh, we get a segue?
Segue.
Do you feel it?
Say it. Talk about it. Talk about your trombone playing.
I play loudly. And on the show, when it sounds like a regular trombone player, it's me. When it sounds like a great trombone player, it's a trombone player named Bill Watrous, who's a great jazz trombone player, who you may or may not know. I also have one of my absurd credits that some people think is the best and coolest thing in my life is that I used to live next door to a guy named Paul Fox, who was a record producer for R.E.M. and Bjork and Jacob Dylan, and a band called Fish. Fish? Yeah. They were huge trekkers. And my mailbox at the time was a cow that had been hit by a bunch of cars. So it was dented and definitely distinctive. You knew where I lived because of this mailbox. Paul lived next door. The band rehearsed in this sort of shared area that we had. And they realized that they thought I played trombone. They asked me to play on an album. They set up the gig to go to record. And I went to the studio, and I was so excited I was going to play trombone on a real album with some real people. And we got there, and they gave me the charts. And it turns out the quality of music they were looking for was a little above my talent level. So it went boom, 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 and I played, and I tried, and it was really fast, and the music was really high, and I choked. I was not good enough to play the charts that they needed for the album. But they had asked me. They kept me there for, half a day. I apologized. It was pretty clear. They were trying to be nice, but it was very clear to me that this was not what they were looking for. They then hired the wonderful trombone player from Tower of Power who came in and nailed it and crushed it. The album is called Hoist. And on the Hoist is a little band on your record, if you got vinyl. It's probably 30 seconds, 40 seconds. It's all of the outtakes of my loud, dreadful trombone playing. And the title of the cut is Riker's Mailbox. Woo! Prescott, thanks for joining us. Nice guy.
Okay, so you made the transition from acting to directing
Thank God.
and producing, and you've done not only Star Trek television shows, but you've done motion pictures. What's it like being on the other side of the camera?
It's a little, to be behind the camera, it's more consuming. You have to worry about the whole picture. You have to worry about telling the whole script. Some actors, which you probably know, are a little more selfish. They read a script and they go, bullshit, 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 bullshit. My line and bullshit, bullshit, bullshit. My line and, or they think there's my scene, or they don't take in the whole picture. One of the great privileges of being a director is that you're part of the pre-production, where you make decisions about sets and costumes and locations and script changes and what kind of equipment to use in terms of the camera and the lights. Then you shoot the show, and then you get involved at the end of that. You do the editing, and you do both post-production, and you do the sound spotting, and you get to supervise some of the music. And you turn in you turn in a finished product, and it's really satisfying. It's like building a car. Each day you get a little bit more done in the car, and then the car is delivered, and it's a car that you really helped build and design. So it's sort of like you. Don't you like to be in control?
No.
Isn't this your car?
Yeah.
Yes.
No.
That's what it feels like.
So, okay, you gotta tell me though, other than yelling, action and cut, what do directors do? I don't know.
They hire the right people to do all the other jobs.
And that's exactly what I do here. I got great staff and faculty. Let's give them a round of applause.
Yes.
Okay, cut.
No, I'm not kidding. If you have a great cinematographer and you can tell him, what if we did this? He'll find the equipment and the way to make that shot happen, or he'll suggest something better. And you have a brilliant production designer who will have read the script and understand, well, if you want to, we could do this and this and this, and if we could stage the scene here, and I'll build that for you. And you have a brilliant costume designer who understands that the clothes can start to express what the character feels and what the character is and the backstory. And even actors, the only thing they have to do, I say they, is show up on time and know their lines. And you'd be surprised how few can do both things. But when they do, we can make them look gorgeous, spray in the bald spot like me and put in a big head of hair, makeup, clothes that fit. They can even tell you, directors can tell you what the scene is about. If you know the words, I can tell you what they mean. I can tell you where to walk, where to sit. All they have to do is show up and know their lines. Bitter, I know. So young, so bitter.
Okay, I gotta ask this question. I gotta read it because I'm very proud of this question, and I want you to listen closely and answer it in a proudly kind of way.
Oh.
Because this is impressive. Creativity and innovation, my things I like a lot, are clearly a part of Star Trek. And not only in the thematic sense, but also in a practical sense. And getting each show made, each show is like a mini movie, kind of like. So talk about the creative process behind making a typical episode.
When you make it an episode of television, you are at the mercy of the script. On our old show, on Star Trek The Next Generation, we used to make 26 episodes a year, which people don't usually do anymore. And those are not going to be 26 home runs. So when I first started, after shadowing other directors for 2.5 years and spending literally hundreds of hours in the editing room and going through pre-production and post-production, as I just referenced, when I finally was given an episode to direct, it happened to be a Data episode, if you know who Data is, Brent Spiner. His episodes are always great because he's a genius. It was written by Renee Echeverria, and it was his spec script, and he went on to become our executive producer on Castle and other shows. So I was 2 for 2, and I was so over-prepared that I was, really jacked up and ready to go. That episode turned out very well. Other episodes, not so much. But your job as a director of an episodic television show is to give them, at least my interpretation of it is to give them the best version of their show that you can. I direct a show called Castle. You know Castle with Nathan Fillion? You show up in that show and the boss says to you, don't waste everybody's time with any multi-stop dolly moves where you'd move the camera around and help tell the story before you got into the close-ups. He said, we're gonna cut them, don't waste any time shooting them. I need 3 sizes on everybody. I need a size here, and a size here, and a close-up here on everybody that talks. That's your marching orders. I did another show called Falling Skies, which was a kind of a sci-fi dystopic. And the marching orders there were, I want the film to look like documentary war footage where you're following people around handheld and you don't have to get everybody's line on camera and you keep in one shot as long as you can and you follow them around and you see who they're talking to and you come back. Entirely different style. But when you turned on the television, you'd see, Castle, you'd see some close-ups, and Falling Skies, you'd see, and Star Trek, so you make the best version of the show the way they made the show. So it seems that maybe that's less creative, but in many ways, it's the box that you're in. I mean, it's great when you get to make a movie or when you get to make a pilot or a TV movie, because then you're responsible for creating the style. But as a hired gun, you go in and you make the best version of the show that has already established its look and style.
Well, you also directed Roswell, Twilight Zone, NCIS Los Angeles. I have a list here. Burn Notice, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and my favorite, the Librarian series.
Yes.
Love the Librarians. Like the Librarians? Everybody see that? Noel Wiley? Very good. So before we get into what you're currently doing, you want to talk about your movies and your prison you're in now?
Do you like that story?
I do like that story. Heard it last night.
Oh. I was privileged to be hired to direct Star Trek First Contact, which was our second movie that we made out of
The clip you saw when you started.
Exactly, which was actually Star Trek 8. It was a franchise, successful franchise, but they certainly were not going to get an A-list sci-fi director like Ridley Scott or Spielberg or somebody like that to direct Star Trek 8. So the woman who ran Paramount Pictures, whose name just went out of my head, Sherry Lansing, said to Rick Berman, the boss, he said, I don't know much about this franchise, but I like that it's always made us money, and it's up to you to hire the director you want. So I threw my hat in the ring and anyway, got Patrick's blessing and then was given this brilliant script by Ron Moore and Brandon Braga, and Star Trek First Contact was made for $45 million. It made $280 million. Next Star Trek comes around to Star Trek Insurrection. We made it for $65 million. It made $230 million. Then Paramount gave me a Nickelodeon movie called Clock Stoppers. We made for $40 million and it made $80 million. And then I was given this big movie. It was not meant to be a big movie. It was called Thunderbirds. And it was at Universal and it cost a lot of money and it was a remake of these marionettes. My wife quit her job. We moved to England for 3 years. I had the time of my life. First of all, we scouted all over the world looking for the best beaches in the world. If you can imagine, that's your job. We shot in the Seychelles Islands. We shot at Pinewood where they do the Bond movies. It was a dream. And it was meant to be a little kids sci-fi movie released at this time of year in March, so kids would have something to do. At some point it took a turn and they said, oh, we'll release it in the summer, which they did opposite Spider-Man and Shrek, and the movie bombed. Nobody wanted to see it, in spite of the fact that Sir Ben Kingsley was in it, and the late great Paxton was in it. And when a movie bombs, the director of the movie goes to movie jail. And I'm sitting currently in movie jail, but very grateful for television.
Yes, because right now you are working on both episodes of The Orville, which I love, and Star Trek Discovery.
Do you watch The Orville?
I
Seth
watch
MacFarlane's
it.
show?
Oh, yeah, I
Very
love The
funny
Orville.
show.
Talk about these two shows.
I did both of these shows last year. The Orville is sort of a very influenced by the next generation because Seth MacFarlane of Family Guy fame and Cosmos and the Ted movies, he wanted to be a spaceship captain since he was 9 years old. And since he's made tens of millions, I think is not hard to say, of money for Fox, they gave him the opportunity to make this series, which is called The Orville. He hired me, he hired Robbie Duncan McNeil, he hired Marvin Rush, who was the director of photography. He hired Brandon Braga, who wrote First Contact and he hired as many Next Generation people as he could get. He wanted the show to look like Next Generation, but he wanted to have his sort of taste, comic humor. At the same time, Star Trek Discovery was being made in Toronto, which was meant to be the new tentpole Star Trek series to launch the CBS All Access network channel, which people were furious because they had to pay to watch something that they had gotten free for 50 years, which was Star Trek. Nobody's thrilled with that, especially since it was on Netflix all over anywhere else in the world. So while I was on The Orville, there was a buzz about, oh God, what happens? Is there gonna be room for us? Because Discovery's it's gonna be more serious and it's gonna be a bigger deal. And while I was on Discovery, they said, oh no, the show's not gonna come out in time. The Orville's gonna air first and they're gonna steal our audience. And it turns out that both shows found an audience and both shows have been picked up for a second season. And I'm, to use that word again, I'm blessed to be back on both of them and looking forward to it.
So you've been directing since the 80s, 90s, and now today. You have cooler toys, more computer techniques. How has that affected you directing?
A good question. I think the toys are dangerous if used just for the toys' sake. And I mean, I'm not the first to say this, but the reason that shows are successful, the reason Next Generation, or the reason the original series was successful, the reason our show was successful, was that the people cared about the characters and really cared about the relationships between the characters. All the toys in the world can't change that. So it's a blast to be using these drones now because you can leave them behind and they can get you shots that you never could get. The Technocrane is an amazing tool. The Lumicrane is an amazing tool. The lipstick camera is an amazing tool. All the lenses are wonderful now, and the speed of the cameras, you don't even need the light, a night exterior. You can shoot on Alexa, you can shoot this whole thing at night with practical light. And it's cost less time and money. These toys have been great, but if the story isn't there and the characters aren't there and you don't care about the characters, and then you just can't save it with toys.
Do you see directors relying too much on the toys now, especially younger ones?
Think of the Transformers movies. I apologize to all your Transformers fans, but it's hard to find any heart in there.
Okay, so I grew up watching Star Trek. I've watched every series numerous times and the movies, and I gotta admit, on Discovery, I was a bit shocked, as were probably millions of other people, that for whatever reason, they decided to drop an F-bomb in the middle of one of the shows. It wasn't even a necessary one. It didn't have anything to do with the dialogue. It was just an excitement thing. So is this the direction that maybe the franchise is going, away from a PG-er, friendlier family thing, away towards something harder and edgier, especially now there's rumors that Quentin Tarantino might be directing the next movie?
Whew, that's a good question. I believe that they dropped the F-bomb because they could. I think they wanted to test the envelope or test the walls of the balloon or whatever metaphor we're looking for. And because they were on essentially a pay cable situation, it's like writers say, oh, my show isn't going to work on a network because there's nudity and violence and strong language. I think this was either consciously or subconsciously proof of where they were in terms of where they were airing. I don't think that the show is necessarily going down a darker path. However, the Tarantino question is really an interesting one because there's nothing to indicate from the movies that he's made that he would be able to make a movie without the F-bomb. Unless
And nudity and violence and...
unless he changes gears, or unless he, I'm really not sure. I had a text exchange with J.J. Abrams, who's still sort of the keeper of the flame for all things Star Trek, and I said, can you give me some skinny on what's going on with Tarantino? And he said, not sure, but Quentin thinks it's going to be wild. So that's the adjective we've got. I'm not sure if that's a good sign or a bad sign, and I'm also not sure, frankly, if it'll happen. I mean, these things, there's a big, like a flare-up, and then they come to their senses, or they run out of money, or I'm not sure what's going to happen with that, to be honest.
Okay, so if you look back on your life and you're at Penn State University and somebody told you back then that you're going to become a cultural icon, what would you have said to that?
Thank you. Bah humbug.
Yeah.
Really? I don't know. That's.
Well, how's it affected your
I don't
life?
mean to be glib. How's it affected my life?
How has it affected your life?
Luckily, I'm married to Jeannie Francis, who was a cultural icon when I met her and when she agreed to marry me. God knows why. And her approach to her success and the way that she treated her fans and the way she led her life was educational, and she led by example, and she's, I don't really lead a kind of a Hollywood lifestyle, and neither does she, and so I think we've been spared a lot of the nonsense. I also, to go back to my dad, I not only have a job that I love, I'm good at it, and I look forward to going to work every day. And even when I was an actor on the show, I looked forward to it because I knew that when you drove, I was driving in late at 6, Turtlehead, old Michael Dorn, Worf was in there since 4 in the morning getting that rubber glued on his head. So we'd go to work about 6 and start shooting at 7. I knew that it was worth it driving to work in the dark because every day was going to be with these clever, wonderful, funny, talented people. So I'm thankful.
Well, let me turn the question around.
Okay.
If you could go back and tell your younger self something that because of your wisdom you've gained over your career, what would it be? We have a time limit.
I know, exactly.
So you can't.
Well, I don't want to be glib. I would certainly have, I would have done what differently? What do you think?
That's a awesome badge.
I know.
I can see my reflection in it. You got no answer for that? Really? You would not tell yourself anything back in college or high school or whatever, knowing what you know today? I got a volume, 50 pages long, I would tell myself.
Nothing that I'd like to share with an audience that I don't know.
Like don't ask this question in the future.
Yeah.
All right, so what are you most proud of in your career?
My marriage and 2 healthy kids, and the fact that I'm still here kicking. Yeah.
What would people be surprised to know about you?
You're good. What would they be surprised to know about me? I like to fish. I love to fish.
I have my associate provost used to travel the world fishing, so he's with you. There he is back there, already getting his pole out.
I meditate. One of my big secrets. I would have meditated when I was young if I'd known how valuable that was. There's an answer to the previous question. If I knew how important and powerful and helpful it is to meditate, I would have done it. I did have an answer. You just didn't get it out of me yet. There it is.
Why do I
meditate?
As an actor, I had to pull it out of you.
You know what kind of actor I am. Hit it and spit it.
Hit it, spit it. If you could do anything else than what you're doing now, what would it be?
I wanted to be a trombone player. I've made that quite clear. When I was doing, I met my wife on a show called Bare Essence, and at that time she was too young for me. We did another miniseries together called North and South, which was a Civil War epic that we shot in Charleston and in Natchez, and while we were making the show, it was picked up for another 6 months. So we were on the road together for about a year. And we were both involved with other people at the time, and we fell in love with each other. And that's another story. I'll button it with that. But while we were in Natchez, Mississippi, we used to go to this bar called Under the Hill, which was under the hill where the riverboats came in. And I played trombone, and I used to sit in with the band on Fridays after work or on Saturdays. And at some point, this trio of musicians who played Natchez and Hattiesburg and Jackson, that was their three-town thing, they said to me, you know what, if you want to, you could join our band. And I said to Jeannie, the guy said that I could be in their band. I could do this. And she sort of, I could feel her eyes rolling, whether I didn't even see them or not. But I thought, maybe that's the direction. Because when I was on North and South, I was like number 37 on the call sheet. I was way, way, way down. I was the guy who was carried for months and months for what they call the cover set. You know what a cover set is?
No.
Do you want to know?
Obviously, it's more than yelling cut and action, so tell me about it.
A cover set is a set that is inside in case it snows, or in case it rains, or in case there's an act of God, or in case there's too much wind, and you never want to cancel shooting. So, and a lot of North and South was shot as exteriors, so you always had to have a cover set. You had to have a contingency plan, if you will, and that cover set often included scenes that I was in. And because we were on location, and because I was working for so cheap, they kept me at the Holiday Inn, and there I was waiting for the rain to come so that I could do my little scenes in the cover set. That's a cover set. There's a little minutia, a little movie making minutia. Boring?
No, love it, love it. Okay, so I'm gonna.
I feel like I let you down with the question about what would I have told my younger self.
While you're thinking about that,
Yeah.
I've got to ask you about this because it came up a lot too, and I'm sure you've been asked this 1,000 times at Star Trek conventions.
Oh, good. This will be good.
Here we go.
To what do we attribute?
I'm going to show a video, and then you can tell us about this. What is up with the Riker chair maneuver?
Oh, did you observe anything about all those chairs?
The fact that you're tall and the chair is short.
Bam. That's all there is to it. I couldn't do it here, could I? It's
bet you
dangerous.
could.
That's dangerous. One time when they built this set for Whoopi Goldberg, when she was, we were blessed to have her also. She used to say that Nichelle Nichols, who played Uhuru, was a huge influence on her as a young woman because she didn't have the greatest upbringing, and she watched a woman of color in a position of power. And this got back to Roddenberry. Roddenberry said, we love you, and we'll build a set for you, and whenever you're available from between movies, you can come and be on our show. So that's how we got Whoopi on our show, and they built that fabulous 10 Forward Lounge. They built this bar, and Morris Hurley named her Guinan after Texas Guinan, who was a mythical, or maybe not, barmaid, who was a philosopher. In the 10 Forward Lounge, the chairs were low. So I took that. I didn't have any idea I did it that many times. So I took that, and in Picard's ready room, his office, the chairs were low enough that I could get over it. So somebody compiled this video, and now it's become a thing.
Well, I could have also showed you a video of your lean, because you're always leaning on things while everybody else is standing up.
It's a choice. I made some acting choices. That was one of them.
There you go. Ladies and gentlemen, Jonathan Frakes.
Thank you very much.